The city of Liraen shimmered not because of light, but because of stillness. It was built on water, yet no one called it a city of canals. Its passages were wide and gentle, made of moonglass, a strange, translucent material that mirrored everything above it perfectly. Light, shadow, sound, even emotion found their echo upon its surface. Instead of roads, Liraen had reflections. Instead of traffic, it had drift boats, which moved only when spoken to softly. No one hurried. Time here did not rush or demand. It simply passed like clouds slipping quietly over a moon. Naela had lived in Liraen all her life. She had soft-spoken neighbors, a small home woven from reed glass and a cat named Naelu, who slept through most conversations. And yet, something in her felt unfinished. Not broken, not sad. Just waiting. Naela would often sit by the edge of the canal in the twilight hours, her feet tucked beneath her as she leaned close to the moonglass and peered into her own reflection. But the face she saw never looked quite complete, as if her features were still finding their place. One evening, the sky turned to lavender and ink. A hush fell over the city as if the water itself was holding its breath. Naela whispered into the air, "Who was I before I stopped asking?" And the water answered, "A silver boat, long and empty, approached without sound." It slowed beside her and drifted to a stop. Inside it sat a folded piece of parchment, smooth, petal-shaped, and bound with a thin thread. Naela picked it up. The ink shimmered, "Come when the tide holds its breath." She pressed it to her chest, and the boat waited. Asterisk in Liraen tides were soft. They did not crash or churn. They breathed, inhaling gently during the day and exhaling under the stars. But once every 30 nights, there came a moment, brief, reverent, when the tide paused. The people of the city called it still water's touch. All lanterns would dim, all voices would fall, and the surface of the canal would become so still that you could see starlight as if the sky had fallen into the streets. Naela waited for that night, and when it came, she stepped barefoot into the waiting boat. It cradled her weight like a promise. She didn't paddle, she didn't steer. The boat moved on its own, as if following a thread drawn in silence. It carried her through the silver-lit city, past the cafes that served dream-steeped tea, past the music bridges where strings hummed when touched by breeze, past the memory vendors who whispered poems in exchange for forgotten songs. All of it slipped by. The boat took her beyond the edges of the city, to where Moonglass gave way to mirrored water too deep to see through. There, a mist drifted just above the surface, thin as sleep. Then the boat turned downward, not in motion, but in meaning. Naela felt a shift. The sky above remained, but she was no longer on top of the canal. She was within it, in the mirrored depths. She saw images ripple past, not of the city, but of herself. A younger Naela laughing, a familiar voice calling her name, a memory of warmth, half-formed and fragile. She leaned closer. The images dissolved, and in their place, a silver arch rose from the water like a question unspoken for too long. The boat passed through, asterisked beyond. The archway lay stillness shaped into space. That the library of unfinished thoughts was unlike any place Naela had ever seen. Its walls shimmered like breath on glass. Shelves curved in wide spirals, filled not with books, but jars, each glowing faintly with a soft mist inside. It was utterly quiet. Yet Naela felt surrounded by sound that hadn't yet become words. At the center sat a figure in gray, their face calm, their presence not imposing but anchoring, like the silence before a lullaby. They opened their eyes and nodded. "You've asked the right question," the figure said. "Welcome." Naela stepped forward. "What is this place?" "A collection," the figure replied, "of nearly remembered truths. The things we almost say, the names we nearly recall, the stories left just before the final page." They gestured to a nearby jar. Inside, a swirl of silver mist shimmered. Naela touched the glass. A sound echoed in her chest, a laugh, hers, small, delighted. Then, a deeper voice, familiar, speaking a bedtime story about a glass canal, a paper boat, and a girl who always looked into the water. Tears prickled in her eyes. "My father," she whispered. The figure said nothing. They only extended a hand toward a second shelf. More jars, more flickers. A song hummed, a lullaby. A hand brushing her hair, each one a moment she thought she'd lost or perhaps never had. She turned to the figure. "Why did I forget?" "Not all forgetting is loss," they said gently. "Sometimes forgetting is how we carry things without breaking." Naela closed her eyes. "I want to remember," the figure smiled. Then walked deeper, deeper into the library. The air thinned, not in oxygen, but in noise. Every step Naela took felt like wading into deeper thought. Finally, they came to a room shaped like a droplet, lit from within by something that pulsed like a heartbeat. In the center stood a mirror. Its frame was woven of moonglass and drift, its surface calm and silver gray. "This mirror does not show what you look like," the figure said. "It shows what you gave away to survive." Naela stepped forward. At first, she saw only herself, older, quieter, uncertain. Then, slowly, the image shifted. She saw herself as a child, sitting by a window, listening to a man's voice read her a story. Then, that same child staring at an empty chair, the book closed in her lap. She saw her own silence, the way she'd filled space with quiet so that others wouldn't ask questions she didn't have answers to. And then she saw the thread knot of sorrow, not of loss, but of stillness, a piece that had been her father's final gift. She didn't lose him. She had simply folded him into her Naela, placed her hand on the mirror. The surface rippled. Her reflection did not vanish. It became whole. The figure behind her placed a scroll in her hands. "When the tide breathes again, you will know where this belongs." Naela turned and found herself already back in the boat. Liraen received her as if she had never left. The silver boat eased to a stop, touching the dock with a near silent sigh. The moonglass beneath Naela's feet reflected her shape, soft by the low light. She stepped ashore, the scroll warm against her palms, its weight light but full of meaning. The city hadn't changed. The lanterns still flickered above the water, casting soft glows along the banks. The canals whispered in their slow drift, carrying petals, paper wishes, and dreams yet unopened. Inside her reed glass home, the air was still and familiar. Her cat, Naelu, blinked at her with quiet recognition, then curled deeper into his nap. A teacup sat untouched on the low table. A blanket remained folded just so. Everything had waited, not frozen, but paused, like the breath of the tide. She lit a candle. The flame wavered for a moment, then steadied. Unfolding the scroll, she traced the ink with her finger before she began to read. "To my daughter, the one who always listened beneath the surface, who knew that not all love is loud. I did not leave you. I simply stayed where I thought you'd feel me best, in stillness. You carried me with you even in forgetting. And now, in remembering, you've returned not to the past, but to yourself." Naela read the words twice. She let them echo, not just in her mind, but in the spaces inside her that had waited so long for them. She placed the scroll in a shallow jar of glass water. As it settled, the ink shimmered, refracted softly through the surface. It did not smudge, it glowed, like memory, kept gently. She set the jar by her window. Outside, the tide stirred, not in haste, but in rhythm. She stepped out, standing at the edge of her walkway, and looked into the Moonglass Canal. Her reflection met her. For the first time in years, it felt whole. She hummed a lullaby, faint, familiar. The melody rose from somewhere quiet inside her. Her voice didn't try to recreate it perfectly. It simply allowed the song to return. A silver boat floated by, empty, except for a folded letter and a small stone. She watched it pass, not with longing, but with peace. The breeze curled gently, rustling lanterns and setting wind chimes into soft motion. Naela closed her eyes, not to forget, but to feel. To breathed with the tide. To listen to the silence that no longer held absence, only presence. And as the water moved again, slow and certain, so did she.